So welcome to another episode of Interviews with Experts. I'm Frederick Dunn, and this is The Way to Be. My guest today is Michael Palmer. Michael is the owner and operator of French Hill Apiaries, which is located in St. Albans, Vermont. You may also have seen Michael's presentation of the Sustainable Apiary at the National Honey Show. In this interview, I invite Michael to share about his beekeeping journey and life in Vermont. Here's Michael.
You know, stewards were all volunteer. Honey show judges, all volunteer, all people I knew. You know, and I arranged it really well. I always had 2 judges for each class. I've known people that really good friends who were honey judges, and they did not want the little ribbon that said honey judge because they get attacked, you know, they get questioned, so by having 2 people, it's a committee, you know, it's not one person's opinion. Mm-hmm. You know, we even changed a lot of the rules to make them more user friendly. And but it was blockade after blockade all the way along it. Now it's great. Now it's really an important thing again. But that took a lot of work and a lot of convincing and a lot of saying, well, I don't care. Don't help me. You know, I'll do it myself. And it was awesome. And it's really turned into a good thing again. So, you know, to make sure that everybody understands the rules, that there can't be any questioning about what the rules really meant. We've been going over this for months, every few weeks, once a month. We took a bit of time off in the winter. We'll go through the whole thing again. And so we're almost done.
What is the path for becoming a honey judge?
Experience. Sure.
I mean, how do you decide who to choose to be that judge?
Well, first off, there's people out there that already have experience. You have to be careful that their preconceived notions aren't going to take over and try to change things, which happens every so often. There's the Welsh honey judges from the UK. They have a really good system down, mostly, and they do a lot of things that seem to make more sense than what we do. But then we do other things. For instance, in the extracted honey classes, there were, I believe, 6 classes, and it went out all the way from water white to white, extra light amber, amber dark. Okay, and so most beekeepers can't tell the difference between, say, extra light amber and white, and so then they enter. And they'll enter one in extra light amber, and they'll enter one in white, and they're pretty much the same color, and they're all extra light amber. And so the white, no, you don't have something that's in white. And we do that with color glasses, you know, like maple syrup glasses. It's similar color glasses. Well, the Welsh judges say, well, instead of having 6 or more categories, even American Beekeeping Federation has even more than 6. And the people you're not educating the people. You're not giving them the tools they need to be able to actually classify their honeys. Let's just make it easier. Let's call it light, amber, dark, like the Welsh judges. Brilliant, you know. And that's a much better way to classify it. Now everybody can tell if it's light honey or if it's amber honey or if it's dark. Pretty darn close. There was another one with the moisture content rule. USDA says honey has to be between 15.5 and 18.6 moisture content. And the Welsh judges are saying, well, they don't even use that. They turn the jar over and see how fast or slow the bubble goes up. Dun, ding.
Yeah.
Right. They're talking about preparing your honey for the shelf. Nobody has a refractometer in the store. Nobody has color grading glasses in the store. And so what we've done is, okay, we'll go with the USDA rule. But, it used to be that if your honey, as long as your honey fell in that range, then if there was, say, 20 points awarded out of 100 or something, 20 points was for moisture content. It used to be that there was a sweet spot in the middle somewhere. And if you were in that sweet spot range, you would get 20 points. But if you were a little bit above or below it, you'd get a little bit of points off, docked off. Well, I kind of objected to that because who's to say that my clover honey made in Vermont, that's 17.6, is better or worse than your honey made in North Dakota, that's, 16.5. They're both clover honeys. They're both within the acceptable range. They're both good. There's nothing wrong with one or the other. So now if you're between 15.5 and 18.6, you get 20 points. If you're outside that range on one end or the other, you get disqualified. Period. So that ended that. Oh, I had some guy from Ontario, writing me emails, and well, he lost the silver plate by something like 1 point, and he had 2 points taken off him because his honey wasn't in the sweet spot. I don't think that was right. So I made a change. But, things like that are just so annoying, and you have to go over and over and over it again and again. And whatever. That's what we did last night.
So you're having this year at the Eastern Apiculture Society?
Yeah, there's one every year. Well,
one every year.
Yes.
And what's the
I
location?
haven't had one for a few years because of COVID.
Okay.
The last good one was in 2018 in Virginia, in Hampton Roads, Virginia. Very good meeting. We had judges that came over from England, actually Northern Ireland. One of the head educators of the Welsh judges, and the guy is awesome. He just knows so much. And anyway, so yeah, that's going to happen. And then it didn't happen it happened in 19 in South Carolina, and it was a disaster. And they wanted to take over, and the supposed Welsh judges that are all certified in this thing from Georgia tried to change all the rules, and they made a butchery of it. And that's now, in the last 2 years, we've been meeting frequently, making sure that everything is written the way we want it to be written, and that'll be given to the board, and then that'll be it. That'll be the rules from now on. We even have a booklet written up on how to set up a honey show and all that. So,
That's interesting stuff. And I know that the reason I was laughing at the beginning is because once you get on a board and they know you're available to volunteer and that you have the time, you find yourself assigned to all kinds of things in beekeeping.
Yes, I know that. And I've done that for years, and I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm selective now.
Well,
I've left the board of directors at the Vermont Beekeeper Association. Yeah, I was president for 5 years. I had a 2-year term. That's and I felt that I needed to do it, and finally, when somebody said, okay, I'll be president now, that was it. And so, I've been president of lots of clubs.
Yeah. Well, I bet you're in demand.
I am, but I don't have the time for that. I'd rather be educational instead of political. And it's really difficult when you have something you're really passionate about, and you can't convince the board of whomever it is to support it. So rather than feel bad or argue, or I don't do it anymore.
Do you want me to keep that in the discussion, or do you want to start fresh?
Sure.
I think we should keep it. And because A lot of people don't belong to beekeeping organizations. A lot of people have not served on boards and don't really appreciate all the behind the scenes work that goes into putting on something like the Honey Show or the EAS, any of those organizations and the things that they do and the
Right.
level of commitment. I mean, you've got a full-time job already.
Right.
So, and it always amazes me that here in Pennsylvania, our president was the Pennsylvania state president and runs a full commercial apiary. And I just don't know how they have the time because I can't do
Is
it.
that Steve? Did Steve do that?
Steve Rapesky,
Yeah.
he just now finished his term as
Oh, yeah.
the state.
I thought he
But
was.
before that, it was Charlie Vorsick.
Mm-hmm.
And now Charlie he was our president for the Northwest PA group, and now he's our treasurer.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And that's how it works.
yeah, I think he's looking for the exit. Although he
right.
probably watches, but
He
took
probably
major-
feels like I do. I would always at election of officers in the winter meeting, I always say, okay, it's been 3 years now for you. It's a 2-year term.
Mhm.
Would anybody else like to take it over?
Mhm.
And nobody would say anything. Because I'd like to have somebody else do it, but I'm not going to leave you. And then everybody would-
Right. And yeah, that's what I felt is why can't he stay? I'd like to see Charlie stay on because I'm a beekeeper at large. That's what they call me.
Yeah.
But I never make a meeting. That's part of my
Well,
job.
sometimes there's better ways to share your
Mhm.
passion, your knowledge. There's other ways.
Mhm.
So that's
Well,
now
and-
I'm concentrating on other ways, educational ways.
Oh, absolutely. And social media. That's what we're doing right now. So,
Exactly. Mhm.
but and the funny thing too was our last meeting at Edinburgh University, somebody came up to me with a jar of honey and did that thing with the bubble.
Yeah, for sure.
They
That's
flipped
right.
it over and said, do I need a refractometer? Look at this, or is this good to go? And I just said, if
Exactly.
I saw a bubble rise that slow, like Pearl Concentrate shampoo, I would say that's good to go.
Absolutely.
So,
And they have another one too. We use a refractometer. Just to look for crystals, lint, dirt,
okay.
whatever. And you put a jar of honey under a polariscope, excuse me, a polariscope, and it just shows everything instantly. You take clear looking honey by looking through the jar and it's, oh my gosh, where is all that stuff coming from?
Yeah.
Well, they don't do that. They hold the jar up, they shine their torch through it. And if they can't see anything, it's good to go because it's not being prepared for some competition. It's being prepared for the shelf in the store.
Mhm.
If you can't see it with your eyes,
Right.
Right.
Well, we don't
That's
see
just
anything
one-
under 200 microns. We don't see it, do we?
I don't know.
Okay.
You sure see it with a polariscope. It's incredible.
Okay. I don't have one
But
of
no,
those.
the thing is that you get so many good honeys and you get so many high scoring honeys, like right up in there in the high 90s.
Mhm.
And how do you differentiate between 2 or 3 99s out of 100? There has to be another little thing in there.
Mhm.
We eliminated some of the stuff. We eliminated, unless it's got a chip in the glass, we eliminated defects in the glass. Because you try to find 3 perfect jars out of a shipment and it's difficult.
Mhm.
We eliminated that unless it's really gross.
Mhm.
So, things like that. We're just trying to make it easier for it. It's a hobby organization. So
Mhm. So how many entries are we talking about usually?
there might be 50 extracted honeys.
Mhm.
Then there's comb honey. There's usually not so many of those, but a bit of a competition. Beeswax, chunk honey in jars,
Mhm.
creamed honey,
Mhm.
arts and crafts, photography. There's a lot of, gosh, what were they saying last night? I think they buy 36 groups of sets of ribbons.
Now, when it comes to comb honey, are they accepting Ross rounds, hog halves, and things like
Absolutely.
that? They do.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. Mhm. So cut comb is one class, and then sections are another class. So rounds and basswood sections would be in the same. I'm pretty sure they're in the same class. And I don't know about hogs. I imagine they're in the same thing. I'm not sure about hogs.
Mhm. Now, do you make cut comb
I
in
do.
your area? You do?
Mhm.
Is that demand growing up there where you
I
are?
would say it is.
Yeah, it is here.
When I
It's
first started, I couldn't sell it.
Yeah. Who's your market for that?
Um,
Old people, young people?
I have a place in that's a tourist destination in Stowe, Vermont, near Stowe, Vermont, and of course that's the famous tourist attraction in Vermont. And
Yeah.
And they have a catalog,
Huh.
and they'll buy 100 cases or more of honey, and they have a big freezer. See, they make do you know what the Eastern States Exposition is? It's a big agricultural exposition that goes for about 2.5, 3 weeks in Massachusetts. Every New England state has their own building. And they put, I don't know how many millions of people will go through your building.
Mhm.
And so they're an apple, they call themselves a cider mill. They make a lot of cider. And and they make pies. And they make pies all year long and put them in this enormous freezer they rent. And so they put the comb honey in there, and they take it out when they have orders.
Yeah.
Works great. It works great.
Yeah. Yeah. Stowe, I spent a lot of time zipping through Smuggler's Notch. And of course,
Oh, you did, yeah.
that's not too far from Morrisville. And as I mentioned, I still have relatives in Morrisville.
Do you?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, my aunt and uncle both taught at People's Academy there.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yep. And my mom taught at the Craftsbury Academy, home economics in the 50s.
Oh, yeah, right.
That was her first teaching job. And my dad graduated there in a class of 12. So
makes you think. I think I had a class of 550.
That's big. That's big.
That is big.
Yeah. And that's another reason why I was so looking forward to talking to you, is because you're in Vermont. And I still have relatives all over. And as I mentioned, the Northeast Kingdom, Morrisville, Chester, Norwich. I still have relatives in Norwich. In fact, the Pierce Murdoch House, which is a famous structure there that's still occupied by my cousins.
Oh,
so, and Quechee, Vermont.
Oh, yeah.
My grandfather was a minister in Chester, but he would substitute for the minister in Quechee. And this is just a fun story for me to tell, because as a little kid, I was sitting there and he put me in the front row because I acted up a lot. And but I looked back, and a couple of pews back, there's Captain Kangaroo.
Oh, really?
John Geeshan.
Sure.
So a lot of people obviously have no idea who he is, but for me as a little kid, seeing him there, and he had a bunch of kids, he had a big family.
Yeah.
And then for them, he was just, he would show up and go to church there.
Yeah.
So in Quechee. So
yeah.
Anyway. But I guess my first question for you, now that we talked about that other stuff, but did you grow up in Vermont, or did you just go there at some point in your life? How did you end up there?
I grew up on Long Island.
Okay.
25 miles from New York City, with a house on the side of each side of us. But luckily my parents bought a place that the backyard was a golf course. And it didn't have a fence. We had a hedge, and my dad took care of this little 4-foot high hedge. And I mean, we could play on the golf course, play football, and hit shots to the, let's see, that would have been the 10th green. So, it was a great place to grow up. It's a good community. Very safe.
Give me a year. Give me a time frame.
Late 50s. I went to the University of Vermont in 67.
Okay.
They bought it in the late 50s for something like 35,000. And I think the last time I knew it, so it was 350. And I don't know how much it's sold for now. It's got to be $1 million or more. It was a small house, but prime location, and it was a nice community to grow up. I get tired of it though. There's too many people there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So when you went to the University of Vermont, What did you study?
I was in pre-veterinary medicine.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
So that was your plan to become a vet,
It
large animal vet?
was. It's excuses. I kind of got tired of political science and, things like that. So I wanted to have hands-on. I wanted to work in agriculture. I wanted to work with animals. I didn't want to study political science and write a final paper about if all men were angels, there'd be no need for governments and things like this. I mean, come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
And so I was part of the Back to the Land movement,
Okay, and Burlington is our most diverse, at least in Vermont, the most diverse community, really, right?
I would say it very much so.
Yeah. And then you mentioned something else just now, that Back to the Land movement. I knew you had to be a part of that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So for those that don't know what that is, and
by the
way,
of course, you know where that started, right?
The Back to the Land movement,
the Maple Sugar book, and Living the Good Life, both by the Nearings.
Okay.
That's like the Bible of the movement.
Okay.
So we moved here. We started to build our own house. We got right into sugaring, set up a little business taking maple syrup down to Long Island and Bergen County, New Jersey. And I had a great route. I'd go down Route 7 all the way down to New York City and go visit my parents and do Long Island and Bergen County, and then Westchester and health food stores and Kentucky, and go back up southern Connecticut up to Cape Cod and stay with my grandmother and do Cape Cod. And then I go north through Massachusetts on the interstate and right up through Springfield and home. And I get rid of a whole truckload of syrup.
And my aunt worked in Springfield. That was pretty funny too. So then you ended up in St. Albans because of that movement?
Why did we wind up in St. Albans? Boy. Well,
because that was a hot spot for that movement as well, right?
Yeah, well, it's the whole area. Franklin County was, they had a number of groups of people. Some called themselves communes and some didn't.
Mm-hmm.
The Earth People's Park and a whole bunch of other places. So we were living on some land in Enosburg Falls after we left Burlington to get out of the Burlington area.
Mm-hmm.
and my wife and two of the other women that were in our group, actually, I think they were getting food stamps. And I think they met an old friend of mine from college. And he said, well, why don't you come and live on our land and build a house and we can have a community. So we did. We moved to their land and we built a house, and took us a few years to build it. I think we had $2,500 when we started.
Yeah.
Big bankroll, but taking down the old Worthmore grain plant and take the lumber down, and I get half for taking it apart, and so that's how we built our house.
And that's not the house you're living in now, is it?
Sure.
You're kidding.
No, well, we had and that was great for my wife and I. We were just a couple, and we lived there, but then two kids came along.
Okay.
And we had downstairs and upstairs, and it's kind of hard with two kids. So then my dad passed and gave us some money, and so we put an addition on it. Took out a loan. We never had a loan before. Took out a loan.
Yeah.
Addition on the house so that everybody could have their own bedroom. And it was kind of good. And they grew up and left, So we have this big house, but it's really nice.
And I'm looking at that vertical post behind you that's got like a tenon joint cut out in it. Yeah. Is that recycled from a barn or something?
Sure it is.
Okay.
Oh yeah, sure. And then we've got the piece that goes along, holds up all the joists, and that goes over to another one. So there's
look at that
bent or whatever they call that, and there's a middle post, and then you go over here and there's another one at the other end. Yep,
that's cool. And then of course you went and got some South American butterflies and put them on your wall.
Actually, no, those are not South American.
What?
Those are, I don't know if you can read it.
Oh, Malaysia.
There you go. So my brother was working for Motorola, and he'd go over and and help at their plant, electrical engineer, and he'd go figure things out over there and bring me home these butterflies.
Man, I was really hoping I made the right call on that. Now I'm embarrassed. Okay.
How would you know? They're blue
Well,
butterflies. They could have been from Costa Rica.
yeah, look at that iridescent blue on the
Oh,
wings
okay.
of the one, and I'm just thinking, oh man. Well, that's cool. So then how did you end up with honeybees as your primary focus?
Well, once when we still lived in Enosburg, we worked for a sugar maker. First time ever, fire the rig and help gather sap. And then when we moved to the group of people, we all lived in one big house. So there was 9 people living in that house for a while. And one of the guy's parents owned a little sugar woods down by the lake. And so we sugared that. That was our first endeavor into our own sugaring. And and then I'd bottle it up and take it down to Long Island and sell it. And then I rented a sugar woods myself, and then various sugar woods over the years, and I got up to around 5,000 taps.
Let me stop you for a second. Did you ever do a sugaring off?
No.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, making sugar on snow, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
That was a big deal. It's a big deal to my dad. The first, maple syrup, they would do a sugaring off, and I never understood it myself, spreading it over snow.
All right.
And same thing, they pulled the skid with the workhorses. They pulled all the taps had buckets hanging on them. All the women were in the sugar house keeping the fire going.
Right. Well, we did, actually we had 2 couples that when we rented the first woods, and so we would take turns. Either the women might be in the sugar house and we'd be gathering, or vice versa, or be by couples, or somebody have to stay all night. So one couple would stay tonight, another couple would stay tomorrow.
Mhm.
But yeah, we had a bulldozer. A farmer friend of mine lent me a bulldozer. So we sugared with that, and I forget what he wanted. He wanted 5 gallons of syrup, or I don't know, not much. He was a good guy.
Hey, the barter system is good.
It really is. It's alive and well too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is.
I like the
We
barter
can't really
system.
say that too much, but it is
Yeah.
everywhere around.
Yeah. So is that sugar house still standing? Is the equipment still there?
I believe it is. I haven't been up there for a long time.
Mhm.
And after that, I worked for a guy, and actually I worked for the guy and his wife that originally bought this property. The original group property, 81 acres. Finally left. There was 9 people involved at the time. They left and they bought a place over in Fletcher with, oh my gosh, they must have had enough for 10,000 taps. So they get up to about 5,000. But I worked for them for a few years, and then I bought their sap one year, bought myself a rig, and I set up, I built my own sugar house out of poplar trees and plastic, and it was an A-frame. Worked.
Now, were you still sugaring when they made the transition to the tubing?
Yeah, we did some tubing, sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they were doing that down in Norwich, and my cousin Jay there, he was just, Vermonters never admit that they make a dime on anything.
No, that's true.
And I saw all that tubing just running down the hillside there to the farm and right into the sugar house. And you tried to make that look like hard work, turning on the spigot and filling the vat and everything.
Well, that's like saying bees is easy work, and all you got to do is, gather the honey, now, come on, we all know that. It's hard work, maple.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So are you out of that completely and just honey?
Yeah, I don't have, it overlaps. The end of the season, the maple season overlaps with the beginning of the bee season.
Yeah.
So I got too many. If I only had a backyard apiary, I would still do it, I think.
Yeah.
But I just don't, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And the
Now, we had
expense that it costs now to get set up, it's absolutely ridiculous. I bought a 5x14 lightning evaporator, and and pans and everything in great shape. I bought it up in Quebec, and I think it was $2,500. Well, now a 3x10, you're talking $15,000.
Wow.
You know, with all the new whizzers and zingers and bells and whistles and preheaters and steamaways and all this stuff. Oh my gosh, it costs a fortune now. But I must say, at least in the woods, what they've done now, you know, with buckets, we always figured a quart per tap, quart of syrup per tap. That's about what you'd get. And with the advances in tubing, with taps that have little ball valves in them, and close it off so bacteria can't get into the veins of the tree, they're making a half a gallon a tap, which is, and with vacuum and everything, that's incredible. They've doubled the production.
Hmm.
I don't know what that'll do to the price of maple syrup, you know. If we
Yeah.
ever doubled our production, I think we'd be in, we might be in trouble. Or maybe we could supply the market.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, it takes about 32 gallons of sap to make a gallon of syrup.
Depends how sweet the sap is, even up to 40 gallons or more.
Up to 40. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's get into the bee point. When did you focus on honeybees, and how did that change your life up there?
Well, I got my first 2 beehives in 1974. Package bees that I got from FW Jones and Sons Limited in Bedford, Quebec. At that time, you know, you could move bees back and forth across the border. There was no restrictions.
Mhm.
So they would bring them up, and then I'd go up and pick them up. And you're not going to believe it, but a package of bees in 1974 was $10.50 delivered.
Wow.
Wow. What is it now? 100 and what? 200?
Oh, you don't even want to know. I think Man Lake sent a thing out. They're 240.
Folks,
Yeah.
you can buy a nucleus colony for less than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's for people that don't have access to a nuke, or, you know, I don't know who's buying them. Last year it was a disaster. So I don't know what they're doing. Well, last year they had a shipping disaster because they changed the resources for the bees. They put them in those bee buses, the plastic bee bus.
Mhm.
And instead of liquid syrup, they changed to this gel, and the gel fell out of the container onto the bees and killed the bees. They were all stuck together. They couldn't move around.
Oh, no.
And 8 out of 10 packages perished in shipment.
Oh, that's terrible.
It was huge. The losses were huge. I did a little thing about it, but I don't know who talked them into doing that, or somebody said that UPS wouldn't accept the liquid. So anyway, yeah, that was bad. Yeah, but you're right. If you can source a nucleus colony nearby, definitely work with a local beekeeper, get them from somebody. So you didn't just get, you just got packages. How did you know what to do with
I got
them?
2 packages of bees. Actually, the University of Vermont Extension Service had an extension beekeeper, Enoch Tompkins. Enoch Tompkins wrote a great book, and I've started now promoting that book. When people say, well, what book should I get as a beginner? And his book is called Practical Beekeeping. It's the first book I had. He was my first teacher. The guy was really a good beekeeper, really a good teacher. Of course, UVM did away with the extension beekeeper eventually, but he put on a really nice course, 9 weeks long, and he was a very good teacher. And I wish he was still around, you know. But, I think that's a really good book. Nothing against all the nice books out there. Really good beginner books out there. A lot of them are very heavily focused on color, glossy pictures. But this one is really an in-depth beginner's book. It really is. It's not just a glossy cover over, you know, just quickly, this is a bee and this is an egg or whatever. He really gets into it.
So that's by Nick Tompkins, and it's called Practical Beekeeping. Is that available on Amazon or somewhere?
Enoch, Enoch. Enoch Tompkins.
Oh, Enoch.
Enoch.
So where's the book available if we want to put a link in there for people?
abebooks.com.
ABE Books.
I've even been researching, and you can get a copy for $7 and something, free shipping.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
We'll
exactly.
We'll put that
A
down there
lot
for
of
sure.
places that have that book available for less than $10 with shipping.
Great. Well, I'm going to list it. We'll put that down there.
Yeah.
So how'd it go for you that first year when you got your packages?
Well, I mean, it went great. I really got into it. I thought it was excellent. Unfortunately, I didn't know too much about it. I took off that super honey and should have left it on, I guess, because they both starved in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
But that's typical.
Mm-hmm.
But then the next year I got 10 more.
Yep.
And and little by little I learned.
Also, even though you lost all your bees, you expanded your operation.
Oh yeah. I don't give up. It takes a lot to make me give up.
Yeah, so you went from 2 to 10. What was your setup back then?
Pretty much the same as it is now. I think I probably started with double deeps. I probably did with a super on top, and then I took the super off. I should have left it on because my setup now is 2 deeps and a medium.
Okay.
So that for more than one reason, surely for more honey available in the hive. So they can go longer into this time of year or into April with no problems. Also, so that there's a larger cavity. It's really cavity size I'm going for.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care what that super is. That super can be top, bottom, or in the middle of the 2 deeps. I don't care. It's cavity size I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And with a cavity size like that, the bees can store surplus honey in the autumn and also have a good active brood nest raising a large cluster of bees. If you have the colony, if the hive is too small and they're having to raise their winter bees, but they're also having to store their winter honey, that's difficult, I think. And so I gave them a little more room, and now, and not only does that help in the autumn when they're raising bees and storing honey, it also helps in the springtime when they've got extra cavity size. And here comes this ridiculous dandelion flow that sometimes we get. Like last year was just the most intense dandelion flow I have ever seen in my career. It was incredible. But, unless you put supers on wicked early.
So when
a larger cavity size within reason in my climate. Now, if you did that in some climates, you'd be overrun with small hive beetles.
Okay.
So.
Do you have any issues with small hive beetles?
No, not really until the packages and the nucleus colonies and the migratories come back from down south.
Okay, because
Then we see them.
I don't see them. I get one.
Then we see them in some yards, in some notorious yards, and
okay.
So I'm not going to say, but I don't really see an issue in the beehives. I don't see slimed beehives.
Mm-hmm.
And destroyed beehives and absconding bees like they talk about, way south of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I do see an issue in the hot room. So if you bring beetles in and
oh yeah,
and they're in the supers, and you let the honey sit in the hot room too long, then they'll get going, and you'll find some combs of honey that get slimed.
What's your hot room at? You at 100 degrees, or where are you at in the hot room?
Yeah, I would say we try to have it around 100.
And that's when they really kick in because they're in stage there.
That's right.
But otherwise, you don't do anything to prevent small hive beetles getting in the hives or anything like that.
No, I don't use traps or anything. No, you don't have to.
Yeah, I don't either. So now, but if you have 2 deeps and a medium, then where are you getting your surplus honey? Those are in addition to that.
That's just their.
That's their minimum
that's their brood nest for year round. The honey supers go on top of that cavity.
Okay. Now, a lot of people, I get people that email me and always want me to take their side on a bunch of different things. And one of the recent issues that people want to gripe about is the dandelion that you just described that gives you a really good flow. What do you think about the dandelion pollen? Does that Because that's the thing that people challenge. They think the pollen from the dandelion is incomplete, doesn't help your bees. And my point is, it's what they have, and it does kick them off. What are your thoughts on dandelion pollen?
I've heard, as you have, read as you have probably, that dandelion pollen doesn't have all the amino acids that the bees need. But that's not the only pollen they're gathering.
Right.
They're gathering all kinds of pollen. So, I mean, there's apple and I call it the dandelion fruit bloom.
Mhm.
So there's all kinds of stuff starting to bloom, and we have an enormous, gigantic, you can't believe it, dandelion bloom here. It hurts your eyes sometimes. It's so bright. And last year, this is crazy, but last year we were transferring nucleus colonies out of their winter nuke boxes. So they're probably 12 combs, 4/4/4. And we're putting them in 10 frame boxes. So we put an empty medium on the bottom board, dark, this is for expansion rooms so they can hang because they get so strong so fast, and that gives them clustering space below. And then the first brood box that would get the at least 9 of the combs. So, we put all the brood in it, and there might be 6 or 7 frames of brood in that, and then a couple of frames of honey and whatever. And then we'd strap it and move it to an apiary. And within that week, we'd go put on a box of that had a couple frames of honey on the outside wall, and then two foundations and 2 foundations, and then 4 empty brood combs. Mhm. And we put that on almost right away, within a week. Mhm. And we went back there a couple of weeks later to put supers on, and all the foundation, 4 combs of foundation was full and capped, and they had swarm cells already. So I've never seen a dandelion bloom flow like that. It was incredible. No matter what there was, it was full.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah, and for us here, that's when we see the dandelions really kick in. You look across the field, and as you described, it doesn't hurt my eyes, but it's that's the time when we're looking for swarms right then, because everything just goes in hyperdrive.
Well, normally we do that, and then we put a couple of supers on right away. And the production hives at that point, the production hives have already got their 2 supers. So now they got two broods and a super in the brood chamber, and two mediums above it. Mhm. And from that period on, we're constantly supering. As soon as they need it, we'll put another couple 2 on it. We'll get them up to 4 to 6 supers. Mhm. And then harvest in August. But we'll have a lot of colonies that'll make, 4 and 5 medium supers of honey.
So do you have a continuous nectar flow right through to August?
Very often.
So you don't have a summer dearth?
No, it goes right through until the end of basswood, which is
say
July 15th. Then we have a dearth. Well, we have a stoppage, and it depends. Like this year, we had a really bad drought. And so then the goldenrod kicks in about August 10th. And if we've properly supered and we've removed the honey crop, the brood nest should be light enough for them to gather the goldenrod flow for winter and raise a nice cluster of bees. Mm-hmm. And so this year, and that's my plan every year. Now, of course, it changes a little every year, and sometimes you got to feed more than other years. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it works perfectly and they're heavy as lead. Well, this year they were light as feathers. And so we fed a lot of syrup this year.
And you probably don't know right now what your losses are yet, right?
No, we've been through all the nukes, given them pollen sub and fondant because they're getting really light. Mm-hmm. And it looks like about a 10% loss there. Mm-hmm. We've only done a few production yards. We've looked at production colonies that were in the same yards as the nucleus colonies. And the same thing. It looks like it's going to be a 10% loss. So it's way early still. I mean,
yeah, our state is already reporting 40% losses.
Yeah, your state always has huge losses like that almost every year. And I wish I knew what to say. I don't. I mean, what is it from? Is it from varroa mites?
it's anybody's guess, because I talk to people that have the commercial people who I talk to, because what happens in my backyard does not represent the state or even my region.
Oh,
I only keep 20 colonies and I lost 3.
yeah.
But I don't put my hives and bees through what commercial guys are doing. Their losses are heavy. We're
So
talking,
is this the commercial guys that are saying 40%?
oh, they're higher. They're higher than 40.
Harder. What about the rest of the folks like you that have 20 hives in 1 or 2 apiaries? That
I don't get to see the independent feedback because they consolidate everybody together. And so when we have a meeting, I talk to the commercial guys and ask them what their losses are. And we're talking 80 out of 100.
wow. Oh no.
And it's devastating because last year was one of the worst winters ever for them.
Yeah.
Because it was about the same last year too. So some of these guys are thinking about throwing in the towel because
I don't blame it.
they're doing mite counts, they're doing all the treatments they're being told to do. See, I don't know. I don't work with their operations, so it's just these meetings we go to, and we have these sideline conversations. But it's devastating, and I don't know what I'm doing different.
We're going through it now. Well, we had a good winter. Last year we lost 50%.
Okay.
Year before, 2 years before that, we were okay. Year before then, the year before that, I mean, in 17, 18, we lost 45%. When I'm used to losing 2% or 5% or 10% max.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Varroa.
Mm-hmm.
And treatments are failing, treatments aren't being administered properly or whatever. So that's why I asked, well, what was it? Because we're seeing Varroa is the culprit.
Mm-hmm.
We have a guy now, his family's been keeping bees here for many decades, 1,200 colonies or so.
Mm-hmm.
Poor guy. I mean, he keeps losing his bees. I mean, he's down to less than 400 now. I don't know how he's going to recover. I mean, I hope the heck he can. I mean, he's one of my best friends, but I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I always wonder that. How do these big guys? They just buy in packages? I don't know what they do.
Don't they go to Florida and Georgia and rebuild?
I don't know what they do.
Yeah,
but it's big scale, whatever they're doing.
Right. I question whether their mite treatments are efficacious enough.
Mm-hmm.
I've used formic acid and it doesn't work that well in my climate. You know? I mean, it just doesn't.
You use Formic Pro?
I know I use Mite Away Quick Strips and I use Mite Away too, way back then. And I've used them both and got no control.
Yeah. And with Formic Pro, they're like, it's going to damage your queens. So they say they're going to go ahead and replace queens, and that's when they treat for Formic before the new queens arrive.
Right.
So that's expensive.
By the time you figure out that you've damaged your queen, it's kind of too late, isn't it?
Well, I think they just plan on it. In other words, they remove the queens, do the treatment.
You mean the beekeepers plan on it?
Yeah, they do.
I thought maybe you were going to say, Mite Away company was going to replace queens.
Oh, no. No, it's the beekeepers. They make sure, and it only works on the strongest colonies, and they have to be well fed. And then they put this is Formic Pro. So you have the extended 2-packet treatment or the double packet at 1 treatment. Mm-hmm. And that's the one that gets the greatest efficacy. But that's the one that also potentially damages your queen. Right. So they just get rid of the queen and then they requeen everything.
Oh, Jesus.
So no, it's not you talk about your sustainable apiary presentation. That is not a sustainable practice.
No, it's not. And if they're still losing 40s and 50%, I mean, it's obviously doesn't work.
Yeah, it's rough. And you said that you feed fondant too. What is this, homemade fondant? What do you?
No, I buy Baker's fondant made by Golden Barrel or whatever it is from Georgia. And
okay.
We slice, I got a big cheese knife and we slice it off in chunks and feed it to them. It's only to get them through from now until I can feed syrup.
Yep. Okay.
Just keeps them alive until I can feed syrup.
Yeah, that's where we're at right now. We had 8 degrees Fahrenheit this morning.
Oh, 80 degrees. Wow.
8.
Oh, 8. Oh, yes. That's what we had.
80. What do you think I'm in the South? This is Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we had 8 also.
Yeah. So, and then they said snow tomorrow morning. So
we already had that.
But we're coming back up to 60, I was promised. And But yeah, this is the big time frame right here. This is critical because they're building brood and they're going to consume all their resources faster.
Absolutely.
And so we got to keep the feed on right now.
Yes, like, so we should have gone out yesterday and today, but we can't. It's 20 degrees and blowing and
Mhm.
can't do it. So Thursday and Friday, it's supposed to be in the 50s,
Mhm.
but it's supposed to have showers. So, I mean, if it's not raining, we'll be out there.
Mhm. So you said you have to go out and do chores. Are your chores all bee related? Or you have other animals?
No, I got other animals and dogs and.
Are
Yeah,
you milking any cows?
No, I used to milk goats,
Yeah,
but I don't milk.
that's homogenized already. Goats are
Yeah. Says I got enough to do in my life. I don't,
no goats, no cows.
no, just chickens and dogs and cats and
Chickens are good.
geese. Yeah,
Chickens are
we got
good.
two Maremma sheepdogs. I don't know if you know what they look like.
I do not.
They're livestock guard dogs. They look like Pyrenees.
They
Yeah.
guard your chickens?
Yeah, for sure. Well, one of them doesn't because she's got to be in the pen or hook because she doesn't like strangers much and she's going to get herself in trouble. She chases after people, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So we built a big fence. We got a couple acres fenced in now for her.
Do your chickens ever get on the dogs and go to sleep on them?
No. No.
I had,
Gemma would eat them. Wilson is a good boy and he wouldn't. He just
Yeah.
ignores them.
yeah. We had Tennessee fainting goats here.
Oh, yeah.
They're also a meat goat that people don't know. But I had chickens adopt those goats and go everywhere they went.
Yeah.
So including sleeping right next to them, laying eggs in the goat shed, and
Oh, yeah.
just it was a lot of fun to see that. But
Yeah.
all right, because I remember you talked 8 years ago when you did your National Honey Show presentation about the sustainable apiary. You mentioned your cow.
Oh, meat.
So
Yeah,
oh, it's
she was-
called meat. So
That was her name. That's right. That was her meat. Her
so
name
it was
was meat.
not a dairy cow.
No, she was a polled Hereford.
Okay.
We had a herd of about 25 at one time. And she was the last calf.
Okay.
And her mother's bag was so enormous that the teats dragged on the ground. And
Yeah.
the poor little thing couldn't find the teats, so she was going to starve to death. So we raised her in the garage all winter and bottle fed her. Kids used to ride around on her.
Mhm.
And so she became a pet. And she was a really nice dog. I'm telling you, she used to follow me around.
Yeah.
I'd come home from work at the end of the day and I'd come up the driveway and there she'd be, and she'd run right up to where I parked the truck and, hey, Dad, she was an awesome animal. She lived to 25.
Wow, that's old for
Yeah, I
well,
figured she
so-
was probably the oldest polled Hereford in North America.
Really?
Because every one other one got eaten.
well, well, and with a name like Meat, I don't know if she was very comfortable.
Oh, she
Okay.
was great.
It's like when you name your chickens, brunch and barbecue, and
Yeah, right.
but your chickens were for eggs.
Eggs, yes.
Yeah.
Buff Orpingtons.
Buff Orpingtons, the Queen of England's breed.
Yeah, so
That's-
they're very nice here because they're so they have so much down on them.
Yeah.
And they have short combs so they
Yeah.
don't get frostbit, and they got the down on their feet, so they're pretty good.
Yeah. Buff Orpingtons are super friendly, and
They are.
that's if you're getting a pet chicken, that's the chicken to
Even
get.
the roosters are nice,
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So did you have any other mentors or people that helped you through, or did you just kind of go it alone from then on?
Yeah, well, after that, it was pretty much learn and then try to talk to the old guys and see what they had to say. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, a lot of the old guys here, they weren't really beekeepers, they were bee havers.
Hmm.
And so they never really went in their beehives. That was back at the time when I was leave alone. There's things you did, like you dose them with terramycin in the spring and fall,
Yeah.
or every year, or you feed them in the fall, you feed them enough syrup, so much syrup they stop taking it.
Yeah.
Well, they never look at brood. I mean, they get swarms, and so there was no Varroa. There was American foul brood,
Right.
and so if Curtis was away, maybe delivering honey or something during the day, Dorothy would have to keep her eyes open for swarms. And so they catch the swarm, she'd hive the swarm, and then, that was their beekeeping, catch the
Okay.
swarms. And replace your dead hives with the swarms that came out of the other ones. And that went on and on for years.
Wow. So how did you find your path? How did you figure out that that was not
Well,
the way to
obviously
go?
that wasn't the path, and,
Right.
making mistakes.
Should just, oh, that didn't
What
work.
was
Let's
it
do
that guy
something
said?
different next
He said,
year.
agriculture is, you learn from your mistakes, you make mistakes and you learn from your mistakes. Boy, have I learned a lot. So
Yeah.
I have too.
Yeah. Well, you haven't done badly. Everybody basically
Still
knows who we
learning,
are.
we're still growing, every year is different, and every year, so what should we try this year? What was good last year?
Mhm.
What was a good year 10 years ago? So it's the same thing. It's just every year is different.
Now, is your apiary serving as like an educational opportunity for people? Or, I mean, you bring in interns or apprentices, or what's going
Yeah,
on up
people
there?
come here to see an apprentice that stays for a long period. We haven't really had.
Okay.
But people come, for instance, on Queen Catching Day.
Mhm.
That's sort of the favorite day for everybody to come. And we have every 4 days, we have a Queen Catching Day.
So what
Yeah.
happens on a queen catching day?
Well, we all go to the mating yard, and we have 128 mating nukes to look at and find the queens and cage them, mark them, cage them, put attendants in. So I have a crew that will actually be doing most of the looking.
Mhm.
And but then somebody has to bring me, I have a table, and it's no big deal. It's two empty hive bodies and an upturned outer cover and corks and paint and cages and whatever, and a
Mhm.
chair. And they bring me the cage. They bring me the comb with the queen on it, and I pick her and mark her and cage her and put attendants in. And that's where the interns usually, or the people that come for the day, usually help the most. Is they carry me they're runners. They bring me the comb.
Mhm.
And sometimes, oh my gosh, we got enough help that I can't keep up. I can mark her and put her in a cage, but I don't have time to put attendants in because there's 2 more people waiting with queens.
Mhm.
And so at that point, I give a holler, and one of my employees will come over and we'll put attendants in. So.
Mhm.
But yeah, that they really like that. And we've had people in the queen mating apiary from around the world. Seriously, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, England, Ireland,
Mhm.
Mexico, and all over the US and locally.
Now,
So,
where do they stay when they come out there for that?
they're usually just for the day.
Oh, they're just there for the day.
Uh-huh.
And then
But if they're from far away and they're going to stay for a week, they usually get a hotel room. I've had some stay here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you're extending that invitation to anybody that's watching the video?
Well, within reason. Did you read Interviews with Beekeepers by Steve Donahoe?
I did not.
Yeah, so Steve traveled around the world interviewing beekeepers. I was one of them. He's from Manchester in England. And so he stayed here. And he said, hey, well, Michael, in his accent, he says, I snore. Yeah. I didn't say you could sleep with me, So we've really developed a lot of good friends over the years because of this.
Yeah.
In fact, we were in Ireland when was that? March of 19, I think, and doing some presentations. And usually it's a tour.
Mhm.
And so they'll all get together and pay our plane tickets, and then, give us a place to stay, feed us, and show us the countryside, show us their county. Well, after County Cork, we went up to County Clare to see if we could find Leslie's ancestors. And Steve came over from Manchester and drove us around in his car for 3 days looking for, that's the kind of friends you wind up with, really nice folks.
Yeah.
And we did find them.
Oh, that's great.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Mhm. And we found out, so it was funny, we found out the name was Corey. And we found out that the librarian, the county librarian in Ennis, had microfilm, and he was pretty sure of where we should go down by the coast. And we went there, but the town didn't exist anymore. It was just like county land. There was no village.
Oh,
But we found a group of houses, and I asked, and they said, "Oh, over there's a Corey," but that was the wrong one. Well, down there's another one, and so we went down there, but she wasn't home, or the person wasn't home. Now what do we do? There's a guy having his lunch in a van on the other fence line, and he comes over and says, "Can I help you?" Oh, I told him what's going on. Well, that's my sister. Okay. Well, our brother is the genealogist for the Coreys. Okay. So, right. So we got on the phone with the genealogist, and she's trying to convince my wife that, yes, you're our family. And yes, I know all about your family. And he starts to say things, and my wife is going, no. And he's talking about this woman named Anastasia, and Leslie's going, there's no Anastasia in our family. All right, wait a minute. He comes up with a photograph of the tombstone of her great grandfather in Montpelier, Vermont.
what?
Right, now what do you got to say? Well,
That's funny.
I guess you got to believe him, right?
Yeah.
Anastasia was the daughter of one of the children that came over, the granddaughter of one of the children that came over with the original settlers in, when they went out of Ireland in 1846 or whatever it was. And that's why nobody knew about it. But just, wow, found the graveyard, found so much. I mean, we invited the guy over to Ennis, and we had dinner, bought him dinner, and he just gave us all these birth certificates and marriage certificates and all these things. It was incredible.
And look at how much happenstance was involved in that meeting. He's a guy sitting in his van.
Exactly.
You just
That
stopped
was the end of the road. Right there was the end of the road.
Yeah.
And why did this happen? Honeybees.
Yeah. Think about it.
Why we're there.
It's a world community, and it's getting tighter, by the way, I think.
Absolutely. I agree.
So there's an awakening going on among beekeepers everywhere.
Although the internet has had a lot to do with that,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, this is an example of it right here.
Exactly.
Reaching out to somebody in Vermont, and here I am in Pennsylvania.
Right.
And I got lost in Craftsbury, Vermont.
Yeah.
Trying to find something, and there was an old guy walking along with his cane, and he had the straw hat with a little green transparent front on it.
Oh yeah, one of those. Yeah.
And it was by the common, and because I was asking, I needed to go to a certain place, and he walked over with his cane, and he goes, "I don't know who you are, but you look like a Dunn to me." And I was like, "Yeah, I am Frederick Dunn." And he goes, "Frederick, what? Expect you to be older by now." I said, "No, that's my dad. He's Frederick Dunn too." "Oh, had a son, did he?" And then he walks away.
Yeah,
he
right.
didn't answer any of my questions.
No.
It was fun to be recognized.
That could be a book.
Pardon?
It could be a book,
Yeah. Well, there is a book.
Boston, Craftsbury, Vermont.
Well, there is that book called Yep, Nope, and Other Vermont Dialogues. Have you ever heard of it?
I'm not sure. Mayers didn't write that, did he?
It was written by Keith Jennison.
Oh, yeah.
1976.
Oh, yeah.
I used to make fun of people around Craftsbury just because they were so tight to the vest on information about anything.
Yep.
And
I get a sugar maker here, and I mean, beekeepers always want to tell you how much they made. Oh, I made 100-pound average, or how it is. You ask these sugar makers, and well, how much did you make? How'd you do this year? Well, we made enough to eat. That's about it.
Classic Vermont right there.
All they say.
Yeah. Or I remember people going by my grandfather's house, and this is a foreign car. It looked like New York. It's Flatlanders, or anybody that wasn't from Vermont was somewhere else entirely. Just There was this big divide. I was glad that my dad left Vermont, though, because he ended up going to New York and left the farm, and he got farmer's lung. That's why I wasn't born on a farm.
All right.
And he became a photographer.
Oh, yeah.
So But anyway, moving on. What are you looking forward to this year? Are you expanding? Or are you staying the same?
A few things.
What's ahead?
For a long time, ever since the beginning, I've used 4-way mating boxes, which is a 10 frame Lang with divided into quarters. Each quarter has four mini combs, which are full depth but half length, and each one has its own entrance on a different side of the hive. And I've been using them. We've got 512 mating nukes in them. We've got 128 4-ways, and sometimes they do pretty well. You know, you'll get over 80% take, you know, returned mated queens, but boy, sometimes it's 65, 70. So I usually shoot for out of 128, I want to have at least 90. So I'll keep 60 and book 30 to sell. And then if I get extras, well, then I have a few extras. But if I get lost any less, then that has to come out of my 60. And we've been trying everything. I mean, how do you do this? You paint them different colors. You give them landmarks. You put them in big circles so that they're distinct on what part of a circle they come in, things like that. And still, we just can't increase the numbers. And the later in the season, the worse it gets. And so we'll be down to, you know, instead of 90, we might be down to 75 queens or 80 queens or 85, but we're below, you know, needs. And so last summer we said, let's try some 2-ways. You know, suppose the queen comes back from her mating flight. It's kind of windy and she's going to come into that hole over there. And all of a sudden she gets blown, and she gets blown over here. And then she comes back in it, but there's that other hole over there in the box. And she goes in that one. That's the end of her. So we kept really good records on each mating nuke the summer before. What are the losses from? The losses could be dead in cell. Okay. You can count those on your hand. Not many of those. A virgin running around in the hive. Well, that means they rejected my cell and raised their own. Okay, not many of those. Sometimes more than others, but not many of those. Queenless, no eggs, no queen, no cells. That's by far the biggest loss. That means to me that the queen didn't come back to the right hole. Why didn't the queen come back to the right hole? Well, okay, she got eaten by dragonflies. Well, where the heck are all these hundreds of dragonflies eating my queens? You know, I don't see them. I see a dragonfly. I see a sparrow, a swallow once in a while, but they're not eating. Come on, these queens are coming back all within a couple of days of each other in that group. You know, they're not going to eat all those. So let's make 2-ways. We'll make a bunch of 2-ways, an entrance on each end. We'll paint them up wicked, crazy colors. Make sure that they're definitely distinguished, and they can find them in the area where. And so we did a group last year. We caught them 3 times. First catch was 105. The second catch was 109. And the third catch was 105. I'm wanting 90. So already I'm 15 and almost 20 over my numbers from the 4-ways. We go to the 4-ways to catch the other 3 groups, and right then again, right down to 80, 75%. And at the end of the season, on the last catch, you know, we leave a queen on either on either side of a 4-way, say, and then catch all so there's two queens in a 4-way now. And then we'll catch all the queens in another one and unite the 2 together and winter each queen on 16 combs instead of 8. Make a bigger nuke, make a bigger population. It's better. It's better. Easier to winter them. So when we caught the 2-ways, you know, usually we get 40 queens, 45 queens out of all those, because at the end of the season, there's always, you know, queenless ones. So you can't get a queen out of that one. You got to leave one. We got 87 queens out of that. We got over 400 queens out of that group of 2-ways. So we just finished making another group of 2-ways, and they're getting their color paint now, and
Mhm.
so we're gonna run another group of so now we're gonna be half 2-ways and half 4-ways.
So
So
then
that's
you,
pretty exciting. That's really
yeah. So running half and half will really give you more definitive results, right?
That's
So you'll
right.
know.
And so this year, we're going to have 2 mating yards. They're probably a half a mile apart, and
Mhm.
they're just absolutely surrounded by my production yards. Well, I
Mhm.
mean, we've overstocked the area just for drones.
Mhm.
And there's going to be a group of 4 and a group of 2 in each of those locations. So yes, we will be able to definitely look at it.
Yeah. Do
Tell
you
them.
have other beekeepers that are close enough to you that they're going to impact your stock?
Mostly no, because I provide queens and nukes if they need them, and they're small hobby beekeepers. Yeah, there's one commercial migratory guy that's about 3 miles from me.
Okay, that's a good
So
distance.
that's definitely, but there's a lot of bees between me and him, so
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm sure I get some of his stuff because every once in a while I do start to see yellow queens being thrown.
Mhm.
You know, everything else in this dark, and here's this bright yellow queen. Well, I'm pretty sure I know where that came from.
Yeah, Southern Queen.
Yeah, well, it's
Um,
Italian, you know.
yeah,
That's what
and
he calls migratory.
that's a really good practice, by the way, supplying all your nearby hobby beekeepers with stock that's compatible with your own.
Right. Well, I have to. I used to be
Yeah,
isolated. There was nobody around.
yeah.
All of a sudden, everybody and their sister wants to have bees. Well, okay, so let's talk. I'm running a breeding program here. So,
Mhm.
work with me, and I'll provide you the queens, and we'll even requeen your bees if you want.
Mhm.
But that's the one thing for the summer. And then another thing is we're running a breeding program with the University of Vermont Bee Lab. We got a reasonably nice grant last summer. And so the first summer we wanted to identify 100 possible breeders, but we really could only we got up to 64. We had such a miserable winter last year but in my opinion, winter is the great selector of good breeding stock. So we found some really awesome bees. And so the first sampling was how many bees they got. So when we unwrapped the bees in the beginning of April, how many frames of bees do they have? That's all. I mean, you can tell that by just tipping the box up. How many frames of bees do they have? So that went in. So anything that was under 10 got eliminated immediately. And then we have records on honey production and whatever from the previous year. And so we were able to pick 64 pretty good candidates. And so they took samples, they did nosema tests, they did frozen brood assay, they did mite counts once a month. And they come out with some pretty nice looking bees, some pretty good possibilities, say. And
What
so
time of year? What time of year were they doing the nosema counts?
in the summer.
In summer, so
Mhm.
because they're kind of more concentrated in spring.
Absolutely. I realize that.
Yeah, but they use that as part of your disqualifying.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's on the list till you find something to kick them off the list. And so,
Okay.
and then, so now we have a list of, and so then this year we continue, we're going to pick the 6 best out of the selection process and take those queens as breeders. Then I'm going to pick 6 my own way and use those 6 as breeders. And then we're going to grow raise queens from each group. And in 2 of my nuke yards, we're going to put 25 of one group and 25 of the other. So we're going to have 50 of each, but they're separated into two different apiaries, because you have to do that. You can't. Number one, you can't compare bees between apiaries, and you can't put all your bees in one place and expect, you need variation anyway. And so that's what this year is going to be. And they're going to do the same kind of testing this year on their daughters, on those daughters of those 6, those 50 of each. They're going to do tests. And then, but we've really got something exciting. I don't know if you saw, if you know who Kara Wagner is. Kara Wagner, she's got a really nice presentation on Inside the Hive TV. You know,
Oh, okay.
Inside the Hive TV, Umberto Bonacristi.
Umberto Boncristiani.
Cristiani, yes.
Yeah.
So he's got her on one, me as well, but he's got her on one, and she talks about this new assay.
Okay.
And the new, the frozen brood assay, and what are they doing? They're alerting on death. They're alerting on dead brood as they would chalk brood or American foul brood or any brood disease, a capped brood disease.
Mm-hmm.
They alert on that. It's death. But Varroa sensitive hygiene, it's not death. She calls it unhealthy brood odor.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's isolated chemicals that the brood gives off, this unhealthy brood odor. I forget the name of the acids and things. And she's been able to synthesize it. Her chemists in her lab have been able to synthesize it.
Oh yeah, I did hear about that. So instead of like freezing brood, they're putting this chemical on the cappings to show the hygienic behavior.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So
okay.
He's got a ring. You spray it on the cap.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
And there's 50 cells, and they go back in 2 hours. And if it's over 60% uncapped, they're highly VSH.
Okay.
Wow. What was the way to test for VSH before? Opening thousands of cells and counting the varroa mites in there. Wow. So anyway, we've been approved to use the unhealthy brood odor assay. So we're going to add that to the program this summer.
That's great.
So we're real excited.
Yeah. That's going to be extremely valuable information. And are there other commercial level beekeepers working with them on that same project?
Well, around the country, Canada and places, I believe there are, yes. Here in Vermont, we've got 3 of us now. We've expanded it into 3 people. So there's 2 other guys that have small breeding programs, and they're going to get to use it also.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting.
This is really exciting. So, I've been battling varroa for a long time, 30 years or more. And it just seems like you beat your head on the wall and you think you're making gains, and then you lose it all. And so in 2013 at the National Honey Show, there was a presentation, you might have seen it, by what was her name? It was called Ghosts in the Hive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in that first group of videos.
Mm-hmm.
Ricarda Cather. And she showed that the varroa mites actually take on the odor of the colony, and they can hide. The bees don't detect them because they've taken on the odor of the colony, which I thought was, wow, that's real. That's pretty, that's a step in the right direction. And then, of course, you have Ramsey's talk about fat bodies. That blew us all away.
Yeah, because they always thought it was hemolymph until that happened.
Yeah. And now that totally explains something like colony collapse disorder, still from varroa mites. Mm-hmm. You can have that happening and kill all the varroa mites, and the bees are still sick.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And then this unhealthy brood odor assay is. So, we're making progress. It seems like finally we're making some progress.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'll ever see the solution, but I would like to. I'd like to at least be part of it.
So ultimately, you're a huge contributor. I mean, everybody's going to know Michael Palmer's role in beekeeping across the board. Mm-hmm. So, but the future is bees that can handle it. Is that what we're saying?
Of course.
So bee stock is the sustainable future for bees.
Now, is that a colony of bees that can keep the varroa mite load low? Or is that a colony that has some kind of resistance to the viruses? Mm-hmm. Or both?
Right. It's probably
So
going to be.
we don't know yet.
Yeah.
I think there has to be some kind of a work on the viruses,
Yeah.
and if you keep the number of Varroa load low, and then automatically the virus loads are low, it seems like to me.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then there's that argument that all Varroa don't carry the same viruses and they don't have the same load and the same
right,
potency.
exactly. And then they have there's different strains of deformed wing virus, and
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're at the beginning of that now.
And the idea of, they just published a paper on the survivor stock that was getting through with a load of Varroa. They just weren't showing the lethal impact of the Varroa destructor mite presence.
Right.
So they were kind of, as you're describing, they were more tolerant or more resistant to the virus load of the Varroa's presence. So, man, that's all above my pay grade. I don't know, but it's very interesting work.
But I pretend.
So, do you have a message for beginning beekeepers now? People that watch my channel are generally backyard, small scale beginners. What's your broad message to people starting out today in beekeeping?
I think part of the problem is beekeepers need bees and queens that are raised from stock that performs well in their area. And that's really difficult. It's near impossible. And so I understand that why beekeepers go to packages or whatever, or nukes from down south. I understand that. That should be a patch. That should be just something that gets you over the hump until either you can learn more about raising your own, or you can develop your area can develop producers of local stock. For instance, that's one of the things I think is so important about raising nucleus colonies in June, say, and requiring queens at that time. It always was before. When do you get your queens? April, May. Mm-hmm. When can you make your splits? May, June. Mm-hmm. And so people that want their queens early can't get them from local producers because they can't have them that early. Mm-hmm. They want to make their splits in April, May from strong hives so they won't swarm. And so, but if you convince people that if they're making nukes in say June, northern beekeepers can have stock queens raised for June. Mm-hmm. And so once you create a demand, then you create beekeepers will take that up, but it's creating the demand, and it's hard to create a demand when so we need more education. We also need, if you saw my brood factory talk yet, nucleus colonies are making nucleus colonies. All my nucleus colonies come from nucleus colonies. Mm-hmm. I have perennial nucleus colonies that just are their role in this world is to make me frames of brood, either for stocking cell builders and making them very populous with nurse bees. And then once we have queens going on and making nucleus colonies with whatever brood is in those brood factories and making nucleus colonies. We made 352 nucleus colonies from, I don't know, and all the queens and 1,200 queens. And all the resources come out of brood factories, mm-hmm. resource highs, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so we need people thinking that. I mean, I'm not talking about you need 100 brood factories, but you might have one double nuke box whose all they do is make you brood. Mm-hmm. And you make nucleus colonies out of it, and mm-hmm. Restock your apiary or sell it to your mm-hmm. friends, or mm-hmm. and you bought those queens because you can't raise queens yet, so you bought those queens from the guy in your club. And then you've started a program, and there's one in Montgomery County, right? Mm-hmm. There's a queen rearing program and a cell. They raise cells. Scott Famous. They raise cells for people in the club. Great idea. So I think we need more of that, and mm-hmm. we need people to give people the education and the confidence that they can actually do this, because it's They're not doing anything. The bees are doing it. They're making it, they're setting it up so the bees can do this thing.
Mhm.
And that's all it is, you know? So rather than saying I can't, or I don't know how, or I'm afraid to try, it just takes a little bit of time,
Mhm.
a little bit of education.
Yeah, that the nucleus resource hive thing is I found to be inexhaustible. I do 5/5s, so I do double decker nukes here.
Mhm.
They're not insulated, they're not fed, they're not helped along in any way, and they're still strong right now. And all I do is if I need more brood for a colony, I go and I put in a drawn comb and pull out a frame of brood and go and fortify a colony.
Right,
If I find that I don't have a queen, I go steal their queen. I let them make a new one.
right.
And I have treated them badly all last year.
That's right.
And
It's hard to kill them. They can swarm, and
they
might
do.
not
They're
make
swarm
they might
generators
not
if you
make
don't
the
keep up with
winter.
them. Yeah.
So in mine, we'll have, if they swarm, and late in the season, forget about it. They're not going to make the winter.
Right.
So we're building them up into, they're not just in 4/4/4. They're 4, 5, and sometimes 6 stories high.
Wow.
They're 16 or 20 or occasionally you get a 24 comb high. We're pulling brood out of these things constantly, and they still build population.
Yeah. It's
know, it's amazing.
why is that? What is it about the nucleus size box that puts them in that kind of overdrive? The other thing is we're constantly having new queens in there.
Right. I'll tell you what I think it is. I think it's vertical configuration.
Yeah.
I think that when you have a narrow cavity, like a tree, heat rises, and the combs, you can put empty combs directly above the active cluster, and they're on it because it's warmed already. They don't, in a 10 frame Lang or something, in order to grow additional combs of brood, they have to move out onto those combs to the side horizontally. Well, those combs are cold. And so in order to be able to get there and warm those combs, they have to build population. So there's a bit of a catch-22 there. You know, you need more bees to populate those combs to warm it, but you don't have enough because you don't have the brood. And so I think this vertical configuration is really the answer to growing brood. I wouldn't use them for production hives. You know, one of my employees has for years tried to have 2 nucleus colonies in 3 stories high, you know, in the same bottom box, in, you know, with three nuke boxes on top and an excluder and honey supers. And you cannot keep those things in the hive. And if one of them swarms, they won't raise their queen because the other side of the excluder has a queen, and they know that, and they don't even bother. So yeah, you really have to manage them, and so we're pulling brood out and all the time, starting in May 9th and finishing probably July 10th or July 1st or somewhere in there. Of course, our timing is different than anyone else's, but you know, that's what we're doing. We have to do that. And finally, when we're pulling nukes, we're done raising queens. We got the queens already, and we're going to start making our last round of nukes. We'll go through and we'll take out all the brood except for maybe 3 combs. In those so they've been taken from 5 down to 4 because the top one is full of honey, and we either get that or give it to somebody. And so we're building them up all summer, taking brood out, but adding combs and building them up from 3 to 5 maybe, and taking out brood for cell builders. And then we start taking out brood for nucleus colonies, and then and we're replacing it with empty comb. But then at some point we start taking nucleus colonies and we take a story off. So we'll go to 5, from 5 to 4 or 6 to 5 or whatever it is. And then we'll do it again in, you know, the next week. And by that time we're down to 3 or 4 combs of brood in the bottom 2 boxes, and the rest is going to be empty comb and honey and maybe some foundation because we're in the goldenrod flow. And so they build them up. So we build them up all summer, even though we're taking out. We're building them up, building them up, and building them up, and then we're knocking them down and knocking them down and knocking them down. And If they need a new queen in July because she's already 2 years old or she hasn't produced well, we requeen them, but they're perennial.
Mhm.
They never go away, hopefully.
And then at what point do you leave them alone for their winter resources and everything?
Well, once we're done taking them down to the minimum amount of brood, 3 to 4 combs,
Mhm.
and they have enough room to store the goldenrod flow that's coming, then we leave them alone.
Mhm.
You know, we'll do some requeening in middle to the end of July. So we go through the whole operation. Anybody that needs a queen by production or whatever, will requeen. Same way with the nukes. I don't like queens in my brood factories that are more than 2 years old, even though they're doing great. Their time is coming.
Mhm.
And I don't want a queen in a brood factory in the spring that's marginal, that's, that's not gonna crank out frames of brood. So we'll replace them in July. And then after that, it's harvest time.
Well, I don't know what else to say to you, Mike.
Hmm.
I really, I mean, there's a lot to say, but this has to end somewhere.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Mhm.
A lot of the things that you've said, first of all, it's really interesting to know more about your personal story. And the other thing is you have so much valuable information to share with people. I'm going to name the book here. If there are links to anything that you want people to know about,
Mhm.
there was a project you mentioned that there's fundraising for kids
I
down in
do.
Mexico.
Well, I can talk that.
Yeah.
So let's see, what year was that? 2017. I traveled to Veracruz, Mexico, which is on the Gulf of Mexico side, just north of the Yucatan. And I was there 4 days and spoke to different groups of beekeepers. And at that meeting, two things happened. I was introduced to a school that teaches beekeeping. It's a high school. And it's a technical school. So one of the things they teach is beekeeping. And the kids have, the bee suits are all rotten and ripped, and the veils and the gloves have holes in them. And, the suits don't have zippers, and, the hives really could use an upgrade, and the extractor was rusty. And so that was a need. But then I met a woman there that, this woman, I was so attracted to this woman, and she was 92 years old. Okay. So she is the elder beekeeper of the community. When she entered the room, she's about 4'3". She's very small.
Mhm.
And when she entered the room, she was using a cane, and she had probably her daughter with her. And the cane was like an Antiques Roadshow craft cane. It was like amazing. And so I just had to see that cane, and hey, can I see your cane? And she gives me her cane to see it. It was beautiful, all painted and carved. I gave her a comb honey. I actually got some comb honey there, a case of comb honey, a little square, little ones. I couldn't take it there because they take it away from me at the border.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my friend, an interpreter and traveler, and he says, "You just send it here. We'll get it there." So we're better smugglers than you all are. So it was there on the table. So anyway, I gave her a piece of the comb honey, and then the next day at one of the meetings, I guess it was probably the last meeting of the 4 days, I sat with her, and well, first off, they gave her a Lifetime Achievement Award. And she had bees since she was 14. She never
Wow.
went to school past 4th grade because they couldn't afford it. But so they gave her a Lifetime Achievement Award, and they had me award it to her. So I'm sitting with her, and I gave her a Vermont beekeeper's cap, and she took off that old hat she had on, put on that, and she said, "Senor, nobody's ever given me anything, and nobody important has ever spoken to me before."
Wow.
I'm trying to speak to her, and through an interpreter. And she says, "Senor, I can speak to you, and you don't know what I'm saying." and you can speak to me and I don't know what you're saying, but it doesn't matter. No es importante. It's not important. And I said, Elvira, ¿qué es importante? What is important? And she says, el corazón, the heart. That just absolutely melted me. And so I decided I'm going to do whatever I can to help these guys, these people, these kids. And so I had a fundraiser in the next year for a year, and I took a check for almost 7,000 to them in
Wow.
in
Yeah.
2019 in November, and we had another tour. We went to 4 different locations, one in Mexico City in a region called Xochimilco, which is along the canals that the Aztecs made, and then the other 3 in the state of Oaxaca, down by on the Pacific coast. I'm telling you, those people are so good. They're so nice to me. And anyway, when I gave them the check, the only people that knew about it were the people I travel with. And they might have told El Maestro, the head of the school, about it. And so the kids made a big check, a big cardboard check, how people do. And then we presented it, and had two of the little girls came up and held the check, and it's like the people were blown away. They filled my table with gifts, a bag of avocados,
Yeah.
a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
I tried to keep the avocados, but I couldn't send it home because it's vegetable, but I did send the loaf of bread home.
Yeah.
And I eat that loaf of bread. You bet. That's a loaf of bread that somebody made for me.
Yeah.
Really, that blew me away. So anyway, because of the success, actually the money was supposed to be for the beekeeping program at the school. Well, Javier, who was our driver, said, you went to that school, and he would rather see the money went to the kids than the school. So he figured out how to get suits, gloves, bales, smoker, hive tool, a beehive, and bees for each kid that was a graduate of the beekeeping program. And there was enough money there to help 2 schools. So now I did it again. I just started again in January with a $10,000 goal, and I'm about $400 short right now. But, all my Zooms money goes there, and people, every time I have a Zoom, I'll get a bunch of contributions. If I say this, so you can go on my Facebook site, and you'll see it there. I think the address, and you can write it down. I think it's right. It's https://gofund.me 3E 5D 6A 58, something like that. Off the top of my head, I think that's right. But it's for sure, it's on my website. I mean,
Okay.
on my Facebook page.
Yeah, I'll find that and I'll put that link down in the video description.
Yep. And you know what? If somebody wants to contribute, it doesn't matter. I mean, $5, I don't care. Every little bit helps. Not everybody's going to contribute 2,500 like somebody did. Or even 100. That's not the point. It's we're building bridges here, and tearing down walls, we hope. We have to remember that North America does not end at the Texas border.
Right.
North America ends at Guatemala. So these kids are members of North America, just like we are, and just like our kids are.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I was down there. You said like she didn't go through a lot of schooling. A lot of people don't realize I was down outside of Rio Bravo, and it costs $50 a year for each child to attend public school.
Right.
And so for a lot of families, they can't even afford that.
But not only that, they have to have a uniform.
Yeah, and school supplies.
And that all costs money.
Right. So it is, it's very easy to help people out down there.
So we figure that providing each of these students a beehive and the equipment they need, this is the beginning of them possibly making some income for their families or their future families, So, So anyway, we've got another one, and that's, I'm going to let that one go until right through the summer. I just see what we can get. If we can get more than 10, great.
Okay. That's great. Anything else?
No.
All right. Well,
Time
Michael,
to
I
do
really
chores
enjoyed.
again, Got to take the dogs for a walk.
All right. Well, I really enjoyed talking with you, and I'm so glad you took the time
Oh, yeah.
to do
Pleasure.
this.
Thank you. Thank you for
And,
inviting me.
I wish you all the best this spring as your bees get out and the weather warms up.
Yep.
And we'll stay in touch.
All right. Do that.
All right, Michael.
Take care.
Thank you. Well, thank you for joining me for another episode of Interviews with Experts. I hope you enjoyed learning about Michael Palmer and his progress in beekeeping. Please visit the video description for links and further information. I'm Frederick Dunn, and this is The Way to Bee. I wish you all the very best in beekeeping. Thanks for watching.